Hello everyone, welcome to the next video where I read a chapter from The First Bloom, which is a Dandy's World Transformation TF saga. This is part of Arc 1 of The Guarded of Broken. This specific chapter is called Petals in Black Ichor. Just as a warning, it contains transformation, female to male TG, and mind change. It was written by Narwhal and it has 12,044 words. This is also going to be a long video, so sit tight. Here we go. June 1st, 2027. Daniela Bloom had long since stopped expecting her life to begin. That was the embarrassing part of it. Not that things were bad exactly, not bad enough for anyone to look twice, not tragic enough to sound interesting when said out aloud. She had a place to sleep, temporary jobs that came and went, a phone that still lit up now and then with messages she let sit unanswered when they were expired into guilt. She was scrawny. She lacked of muscle and fat. She was unattractively thin and weak. At 22, that felt worse somehow. Too old to still be waiting for something to click. Too tired to imagine what clicking would even look like. Her life had taken on the texture of holding her breath without meaning to. Get up. Go where she was told. Be polite. Be forgettable. Go home. Scroll until her eyes hurt. Sleep badly. Repeat. She had gotten very good at being the kind of person the world slid around. It was a skill she had learned young. In school, Daniela had been easy to miss until someone needed a target. She had been the girl other kids spoke over, then laughed at when she finally said something. The one left out of photos unless she drifted to the edge of them by accident. The ones boys mocked for being too quiet, too strange, too stiff, too much of a downer, too easy to make flinch. She learned easily that if she stayed small enough, people got bored faster. Home had not helped. Her father left when she was young enough for the absence to become part of the furniture. The story, when it finally reached her in scraps ugly enough to stick, was simple in the way cruel things often were. He had wanted a male-only family. A son. A different future than the one he got. Daniela had never been able to decide which was worse. That he had gone because she was a girl, or that somewhere in him there had once been a version of fatherhood that had conditions. After that, the ache of being unwanted became so familiar it almost passed for personality. So no, Daniela did not think of herself as tragic. Just stalled. Which was probably why, on the morning of June 1st, 2027, she boarded a train without checking the route too carefully. It was not some grand act of rebellion. It was barely even an act of intention. She had left a temporary shift early after being told, for the third time that week, that they didn't really need her after all. She had walked 2 blocks in a light drizzle, hands stuffed into pockets of a jacket too thin for the weather, and found herself at the station with nowhere in particular she wanted to go. So she bought the cheapest ticket from the machine and got on. The train was nearly empty. A man in work boots slept against the window near the far end. A teenager with chipped black nail polish watched videos without headphones, the sound leaking tinny and sharp into the stale air. Across from Danielle sat an older woman with a grocery tote in her lap, and the fixed, careful expression of someone determined not to start a conversation. Long day? The woman asked gently. Daniela hesitated, surprised. Something like that. Going home? Daniela glanced at the Rain Street glass. Not exactly. Just going. The woman nodded as though she understood. Sometimes that's enough. Daniela gave a faint, humorless smile. I hope so. She took a seat by the window and watched the seaside in great strips of black and traffic and graffiti scratched concrete. Then came quieter blocks, warehouses, fenced lots. Forgotten corners of neighborhoods where buildings sagged themselves like old teeth. Rain shredded down the glass in crooked lines, blurring everything just enough to make it unreal. She didn't know where the train was headed. She didn't care. For once, not caring felt easier than pretending she had a destination. The motion against of the car settled into her bones. She let her head rest against the cold windows and watched reflections ghost over her face. Her own tired eyes, the carriage lights, brief flashes of a dark tunnel wall. For a while she thought maybe she could ride until the end of the line, then turn around and come back, waste a day on purpose, do one useless thing simply because she could. That at least would still count as choosing. When the train finally hit a stop at a platform she didn't recognize, she looked up. The station sign was half obscured by grime. Beyond the platform lay a stretch of overgrown lots and old service roads, the kind of place that used to be busy once and never recovered from whatever changed. The other passengers barely reacted. The sleeping man stayed asleep. The woman with the tote got off without looking back. The teenager remained where they were, head bent to their screen. Daniela stood for no better reason than the fact that the doors were open. The platform smelled like wet cement and weeds. Somewhere nearby, water dripped in an rhythmic, hollow plink. A chain link fence ran along one side of the station, bent inward in places with vines pushing through it. Beyond the fence stood the husk of an old district she couldn't name. Low buildings with boarded windows, cracked asphalt, faded signs with letters missing. As the train doors chimed, Daniela lingered on the threshold. The teenager glanced up from their phone. You getting off here? I think so, Daniela replied. They frowned. Weird stuff. Nothing out there. Daniela shrugged. Sounds perfect. Suit yourself, the teen muttered. Don't blame me if it's haunted. Daniela stepped onto the platform. At least ghosts are honest. Daniela looked back once, then let them close behind her. The train pulled away, leaving the station abruptly, almost rudely quiet. For a second she thought about waiting for the next one. Then she shoved her hands deeper into her pockets and started walking. She took what looked like a service road because it was there. Patches of weeds split the pavement. Rainwater had gathered in potholes black enough to look oily. The city noise faded a little more with every step until all that remained were distant traffic, dripping gutters, and the scrape of her shoes. A wrong turn, maybe. A shortcut. A dare to herself to at least do something today. She followed the road past the collapsed signpost and the shell of what might once have been a convenience store. Around the bend, half hidden behind standard trees gone wild, something large emerged from the drizzle. At first she could not make sense of it. Then the shape resolved. A squat, sprawling building sat behind a rusted perimeter fence, its old, cheerful architecture made ugly by neglect. Rounded corners, decorative trim, fade awning striped in pastel colors now leached almost white by weather. Murals peeled from the outer walls in blister curls. Smiling suns, cartoon clouds, children with impossible proportions, mascots rendered in broad dated shapes. Some of their faces had flaked away. Others remained just intact enough to be unsettling. A sign hung crooked over the entrance. Most of the bulbs around it were dead. Several letters were gone entirely. Still, there was enough left to read the name. Garden View. Below it, in smaller print, nearly erased by time, Educational Center and Museum. Danielle slowed. The place looked less like a building than the memory of one. Rain ran down the cracked mascot signage in dark lines. The windows were blind with grime, some boarded, some merely broken. Weeds had swallowed the walkway. One of the decorative cutouts near the entrance, a smiling flower with gloved hands, had split straight through the face. Wow, Danielle muttered to no one. Pathetic. The world came out quieter than she meant it to. And yet she didn't leave. Maybe it was the absurdity of finding something like this out there. Maybe it was the ugly charm of it. Maybe it was the sense, sudden and irrational, that if she turned around, now the day would simply seal back over her and nothing at all would have happened. She pushed open the gate. It protested with a streak of rust. The front pads squelched under her shoes. Up close, the murals were worse. A painted rainbow had peeled so badly it looked skinned. The smiling mascot had that particular ancient cheapness old family centers wore badly. Too much joy painted onto faces never meant to survive weather or time. One of the front doors was chained shut. The other stood slightly ajar. Daniela stopped in front of it. The gap was narrow, dark. Inside, nothing moved. Rain tapped against the awning above her. Somewhere in the distance, a loose metal panel clanged once and went still. She should have turned around then. This was exactly the kind of stupid opening people walked into stories right before someone found their shoe and not the rest of them. There was mold on the frame. The smell coming through the crack was awful, old dust, wet drywall, and something underneath that was sweet in the way forgotten candy was sweet, or flowers left too long in a closed room. And still there was a sensation she couldn't quite name. Not invitation. Not exactly. More like the stage presence of a held breath. Like the building had been waiting with its hand on the knob for years, and she arrived the exact moment it expected. Danielle laughed under hers, once humorously. Sure, she said. Why not? He put one hand on the door and pulled. It opened with a sticky drag, as though reluctant to break the seal of his own disuse. And as Danielle stepped through the entrance to Garden View, the first song began. Yes, this is a musical. It's a musical TF saga, to be more exact. Morning comes through a cracked up vine, dust in the gull like a warning sign. Cattle screams, corpus moan. Funny how a room can sound alone. Same grace sing, same unpaid bill. Same old egg dressed up as still. Faces pass, but none of them stay. Like vanish mid-step and not change the day. The lobby beyond was dim, but not fully dark. Grey daylight leaked in through high, filthy windows and spread thinly over the roof. I know the drill. I know the part. Keep it light, keep it off the heart. Make myself useful, small and clean. Fade in the places I've already been. Maybe there's something just through the door. Not a grand life, not even more. Just somewhere I don't disappear. Somewhere the silence can tell I'm here. Somewhere a room might learn my name. Somewhere a day doesn't look the same. I'm not asking for skies to part. Just one small place, just one small start. Maybe there's something just through the door. I used to think I was bound for wide, bright lit streets and a moving tide. Now I pick routes by the cheapest fare and call it freedom when nobody cares. I used to laugh and I learned it well, how to make myself hard to tell, how to stand where the shadows fit, how to be there and not be it. Dust motes shifted in the air like old glitter. A price counter sat crooked against one wall, its plastic bins empty except for faded ticket stubs and scraps of paper gone soft at the edges. But there are nights where the air goes strange, like the world forgot one tiny change, like something waits where the roads all bend, like baby lost things don't always end. Maybe there's something just through the door, not a grand life, not even more. Just somewhere I don't disappear, somewhere the silence can tell I'm here. Somewhere a room might learn my name, somewhere a day doesn't look the same. I'm not asking for skies to part, just one small place, just one small start. Maybe there's something just through the door. Not chosen, not cherished, not missed when I leave. That's what the mirrors and hallways believe. But what if they're wrong? What if somewhere unseen there's a stage with a light and a space in between? A mural of blue sky with smiling clouds covered the far side of the room. True Dew had climbed hard way across it in green-black broom. Maybe there's something just through the door a little less, a little bit more. Somewhere the dark doesn't swallow me whole. Somewhere a room could call it a roll. Somewhere a hand reaches out of the gloom. Somewhere a flower decides to bloom. I'm not asking for the heavens to start. Just open one door. Just one part. Tiny handprints, once painted bright along the lower wall, had dulled due to the color of old bruises. Daniela took a few steps in, the door falling mostly shut behind her with a muffled thud. The sound seemed to travel. The lobby answered with a hush so complete it almost felt deliberate. Not empty, she thought. Pause. There were children's chairs stacked near a defunct crate corner. A toppled cardboard castle sagged near what had once been a party room entrance. Framed posters advertised anime shows, educational exhibits, mascot meet and greets. The dates on them were decades old. A rack of brochures leaned at a bad angle, most of them fused together by damp. The place had the pathetic look of somewhere built to produce delight on a budget and then abandoned too quickly for dignity. Cheap cheer gone to ruin. And yet what unsettled her was not the decay, it was how badly the building still seemed to want to be looked at. Every sign angled itself forward as if ready to be read. Every mural still smiled through the mold. Even the darkened stage beyond the lobby archway had the posture of something waiting for the curtain to rise. Garden View did not feel dead. It felt like an actor frozen mid-mark, holding still for far too long, trusting the light to come back eventually. Daniela moved farther in. Her shoes squeaked faintly on damp tile. The sound bounced off the walls and came back thinner. To her left, an arcane nook sat in silence between a banner that read Play, Learn, Shine. The machines were gutted or dead, their plastic housings gone brittle with age, but a few still had cartoon stars painted around the coin slot. To her right, a low hall led deeper into the center, where painted footprints marched cheerfully across the floor in primary colors. The sight of them made something in her chest tighten. She remembered being 6 years old in some dentist's office or church basement, following painted feet because adults thought that made waiting fun. She remembered childhood games where children were told to stand on colored marks to be sorted. She remembered the strange humiliation of group activities where you were the kid nobody rushed to stand beside. For a moment, she almost turned around. Then she heard it. A soft crackle overhead. Daniela froze and looked up. Mounted near the ceiling, half swallowed by shadow, an old speaker gave a brief cough of static and fell silent again. She stared at it. Nothing followed. No voice, no announcement, no music. Okay, she whispered to the room. I officially hate that. Her own voice sounded wrong here. Too small, too immediate. The building seemed to absorb it and hold on to the shape. She swallowed and kept walking. The hallway narrowed as it went on. Painted stars ran along the baseboards. Several broken doors stood open, revealing low tables, overturned toy bins, walls decorated with flowers, and smiling characters gone ghost pale with time. One room had a reading corner beneath a paper mache moon hanging crooked from the ceiling. Another contained a collapsed display labeled Discovery Zone, where plastic fossils and cracked information place cards sat beneath a film of grime. Everything in Garden View looked as if someone had left it in the middle of setting up the next day's fun and never came back. By the time Daniela reached the inner atrium, the second song had begun to tread itself through the silence. There, dim lights, paint peels in stripes like paper kites, tiny chairs in a crooked row, waiting for children from years ago. Mascot smiles in the water stain, bright-eyed stars gone soft with age. Ticket boot with the glass punch through, still looks like it expects the queue. The atrium opened wide around her, a central performance space ringed by little themed areas and party rooms. Above, paper stars still hung in clusters from the ceiling, many torn, some water-stained, all rotating almost imperceptibly in the stale air. A little stage sat ahead, beneath parted curtains, the fabric grey with dust, but still gathered neatly to either side. Painted clouds curled along the proscenium arch. The mural behind the stage depicted a bright garden path leading towards the smiling sun. Someone had thought this looked magical. Dead air, dim light, something here still gets the cues right. A hallway hums when I pass by. The speaker coughs like it's still alive. Every mural has its heights too wide. Every curtain is split aside. Like all this rot is holding still. Like it could wake up if I let it well. Daniela could almost see it. Children cross-legged on the floor. Cheap spotlights warming the stage. Mascot characters wearing oversized gloves hands while music warbled through the speakers. Applause loud enough to make the room feel bigger than it was. Now there are only tiny chairs set out in uneven rows and a smell like damp paper and old sugar. This plane should be empty, so why do I feel like the walls are listless, like the floor is real, in a way streets aren't, in a way people aren't, dead air, dim lights, still a beating heart. A dressing room with name tags curled, a cardboard moon, a paper world, painted sun with one eye gone, still someone smiling, carrying on. There's black in the grout, in the pipes and the seams, they shine like oil, they're deep true dreams. And in a cracked up planter bed, something bright where else is dread. She drifted past the stage, deeper into the atrium's edges. A half-collapsed cardboard tree leaned against one wall. A set of painting stepping stones had been arranged along the floor of a craft zone, each one labeled with words like share, help, dream, shine. She stepped over them instinctively. This place was made for children. That should have made it harmless. Instead, it made every ruined thing more unnerving. There was something obscene about the joy preserved badly, about a room still smiling after everything inside it had gone wrong. Dead air, dim light, nothing here still should be right. But the dark leaning close to say, you were expected anyway. Don't touch, don't breathe, don't stay too long. That's the shape of every warning song. Still I kneel, still I stare at the one living thing in all this air. Dead air, dim light, petals wet in black and light. If ruin can grow something clean from this, maybe I can too. Daniela paused near a cracked glass display case full of sun-faded puppets. One of them had slumped sideways, its stretched grin split across the seam. God, she murmured. What the fuck happened here? No one answered. Okay, last interruption before I continue story. No, I'm not going to make a clean version of all the stories. Why? Because it's very complicated in the video editor and it never ends up the way I expected. So yeah, like sorry, there's not gonna be clean versions, unfortunately. Back to the story. Still, she heard the disquieting impression that the building heard the question. Ahead, at the far end of the atrium, another corridor opened into deeper dark. An old sign hung above it, letters peeling but legible enough. Employees, maintenance, storage. A draft touched her face from the direction, cool and stale, and carrying something stronger than dust beneath it. Sweet, wet, floral, almost. Daniela frowned. There shouldn't have been any living thing here to smell like that. She took one step toward the corridor, then another. Behind her, the atrium stayed perfectly still. The tiny chairs, the stage, the dangling paper stars. Everything waiting, everything watching in the patient way only abandoned places could. Or maybe not abandoned after all. Daniela reached the maintenance hall entrance and hesitated. The smell was stronger now. Not quite flowers, not quite rot. Something in between. Somewhere deep in the dark beyond, water dripped in a slow, hollow rhythm. She should leave, she thought. She should turn around, walk out the front door, find the train back, and never think about this place again. Instead, Daniela Bloom, nobody special, nobody missed, nobody chosen, stood in the mouth of the corridor and felt, for the first time in a very long while, that something ahead of her might actually be for her, meant for her. That was the thought that made her take the next step, and the next, towards the back rooms, towards the cracked planter, toward the flower. The corridor narrowed the further Daniela went, as though the building were drawing itself around her. The cheerful paint had thinned to stains and ghost color here. Old staff signage peeled from the walls in soft curls. A row of hooks sat empty beneath a warped bulletin board, still pinned with moldering notices nobody had read in decades. The fluorescent housing overhead was dead, but some weak grey daylight leaked in through a wire glass window at the end of the hall, enough to show that the dust drifting in slow, weightless sheets. That sweet smell kept growing stronger. Not perfume, not fresh flowers, something wetter than that. Something halfway to rot. Daniela passed a half-open storage room where old mascot heads stared blindly from a shelf. Their smiles collapsed by mildew. She turned her face away and kept going. At the next door, the paint had bubbled so badly that the old stencil was almost unreadable. Still, there was enough left to make out one word. Bloom. She stopped. The letters had once been painted in bright, childish colors. Now they were cracked and faded. But her own last name still sat there on the door, like some private joke the building had been saving for her. Danielle had stared at it for a second too long. Nope, bad idea. Horror movie levels of bad. But her hand was already on the knob. But I made it worse. The door opened inward with a wet little pull, swollen wood dragging across the floor. The room beyond had once been some kind of indoor garden or activity corner. Its walls were painted with a garden scene, enormous flowers with smiling faces, butterflies with glitter wings, a bright blue sky curling around a paper mache sun. Or at least that was what it had been. Time had ruined all of it. Water stains bled down the mural in long brown ribs. Mold furred the lower quarters of the walls. The ceiling had sagged in one corner, scattering plaster and damp insulation over a ring of tiny overturned chairs. There were craft tables too, child-size, their surfaces warped and littered with fossilized glue sticks, rusted safety scissors, and jars of hardened paint. A shelf by the wall still held construction paper flowers made by small hands, each one labeled in shaky marker. Most of the names had run into illegibility, and in the center of the room, beneath the broken mural, sat a wide concrete planter that had ruptured straight down the middle. Black ichor pulled inside it. Daniela froze in the doorway. Oh, that's disgusting, she whispered. Is that oil? For one disorienting second, she thought the planter was full of oil. Had the same shine, that same thickness, but it moved wrong, not sloshing, not still either. It gave off the faintest surface ripple, as if something beneath it had just exhaled. No, that's worse. And from the middle of that blackness, impossibly alive, something was growing. A flower. It rose on a pale stem from the ichor slick soil, too healthy and too whole for anything in this place. Its petals were rainbow, soft-looking, almost plush. Its center glistened wetly. Black droplets clung to the stem and gathered at the edges of the petals, trembling but never quite falling. Danielle stepped closer before she could stop herself. The room was utterly silent. Even the dripping she had heard in the hallway seemed to have faded. She could hear her own breathing and the faint creak of damp floorboards under her shoes. The mural above the planter had peeled so badly that the smiling painted flowers behind it looked flayed, their cheerful little faces warped around mildews and cracks, all of them turned inward towards the real bloom below. Daniela's throat felt dry. "This is bad," she whispered. The flower seemed to almost shine in answer. She took another step. "Just look," she murmured. "Don't touch." The ichor in the planter reflected her upside down, pale face, freckled cheeks, brown bob gone frizzy from mist and rain, tired green eyes ringed dark with a life she'll never got around living, faded olive cardigan, cream tea, black jeans, scuffed white sneakers. Nobody special, nobody chosen. But here, in the black mirror of the planter, she looked centered, framed, as though her whole room had been arranged from the fact around the fact of her arrival. Danielle swallowed. She should have backed away. She knew with a hard, practical clarity this was the moment sane people left. This was the kind of thing future news anchors described while standing in front of police tapes. Instead, she reached out. Her fingers brushed one wet petal. Oh no. The ichor moved. It did not splash. It lifted. A black thread slid up from the planter and touched the side of her hands with the intimacy of a searching root. Daniela jerked back with a cry, but too late. More threads followed, slick and fine as veins, lacing over her skin, slipping between her fingers, winding around her wrist. "No! Let go!" She stumbled, striking the edge of one of the tiny tables hard enough to rattle the old jars. The flower bent toward her, not like a plant leading to sunlight, but like something answering a call. The black thread sank back into her skin. Pain flashed bright and immediate. Daniela cried and clawed at her wrist, but the ichor had already slipped beneath the surface. She could feel it entering her, not like a splinter, not like venom, but like something finding the parts of her body already trusted and making them its own. It moved with terrible confidence, through the branching map of the veins, cold and thick and purposeful, as if her blood had only been a placeholder for something older. Up her arm, up her shoulder, into the pounding cage of her chest. Her heart slammed once so hard that it hurt. Then again. Then it seemed to miss fire. Daniela stumbled back from the planter, hit the edge of one of the tiny craft tables, and collapsed hard onto the tile. The room reeled around her in a blur of water stains, smiling mural flowers, and the wet black gleam of the cracked planter. Her lungs seized. Pressure swelled beneath her sternum, too large, too fast, as though something were inflating inside her rib cage and had nowhere to go. She clawed at the front of her shirt and tried to suck in air, but the breath sagged halfway. Her body folded sharply. A convulsion tore through her. Then the song began.
Easy now, the darkest creep, but you're still thirsting deep. every creeping dream, from vanishing in winter, so veins and red skin, and flowers and rolling, as it's blossom again. Later, strangers see that bloom for me, bloom and see. While the ocean open wide, how the waves and hello bright, how the sails and flares dark, and we gather in the park. Bloom for me, bloom for me. Can't breathe, you can. I can't think, nothing. Something's new, something's pulling me through you. Stand for spine and silk the skin. Let the music settle in. Heads to petals, here's the dew. Let the world come pulling through. Bloom for me, bloom and see. No lonely, no more fall, no more waiting by the wall. Cause the fruitful pain and grace, cause the blame for self and grace. Bloom for me, bloom and me. Live to the hills, don't bring us home. Live when all names still come. Color the mouth, color the inn. Let the music press them in. Hush, now hush. There is no pain that words cannot bring. Groom and more, groom and mine. Leave that little grace behind. Let the young man break for the better thing you'll make. Bloom for me, boom, complete. Every petal, every grain, every calorie comes off at the edges of the dream. When you wake, you'll never be quite as lost as you have been. Bloom for me, at garden view. Begin.
The sound did not come from the speakers. It came from everywhere. From the walls, from the ichor, from the inside of her own bones. Daniela tried to crawl backwards, palms slipping on damp tile, but the black roots followed with dreadful patience, trailing from her wrist to the planter like an umbilical thread. They did not yank her down. They held her, guided her, invited her. Daniela pressed a shaking hand to her mouth, but the ichor forced itself through fingers in glossy streams. It oozed between her knuckles and dripped from her wrist in slow black beads, as though her body had forgotten how to contain itself. Her pulse thudded wildly in her neck, then slowed, then thickened. She felt it happen. The very motion inside her veins changed quality. From the quick, hot urgency of blood to something sluggish and syrup heavy. Coolness spread through her vessels in branching paths. Veins stood out dark beneath her skin for one hideous instant. Black lines racing up her throat, over her collarbones, down her chest like roots pressing against paper. Daniela slapped a hand against her neck and felt them pulsing there. Not blood. Something pretending to be. I can't! She choked and vomited again. A cloud of red hit the floor first. It sat there for half a second, bright and human. Then black seeped through from within, branching outward until the whole thing collapsed into tar. Daniela stared with dawning horror. Her blood was becoming before it even left her. Her nose began to bleed. Thin red streams slipped over her upper lip, then darkened mid-drip. She watched them blacken as they fell, lengthening into glossy threads that swung from her face and snapped onto the floor. Her gums started bleeding too. Warmth spread through her mouth, around her teeth, under her tongue. But by the time she tasted it, it was no longer blood. The metallic tang was already being swallowed by that sweet, rotten floral slickness. Her body was being hollowed and refilled. Her veins were no longer hers. The roots at her wrist climbed higher under her skin. visible now as moving black filaments that threaded up her forearm and into the crook of her elbow. She tried to dig at them with her nails, but the flesh there had gone numb and rubbery, as though she were clawing at someone else's arm. Her scalp began to burn. Daniela threw both hands to her head just as her brown hair had started to come loose in handfuls, not shedding, coming free. The roots gave way all at once, releasing with a wet, slick peel that made her cry out. Strands strutted all over her fingers, slick at the base and with black shine. When she yanked another handful free, patches of her scalp came with it. Soft, pale layers of skin sloughing under her nails before sealing again into something smooth and off-white. My hair! Another convulsion ripped through her. She doubled over and vomited a dense surf of ichor onto her lap, soaking the cream of her shirt until the fabric clung black and heavy to her skin. The front of her cardigan drank it too. She looked as if she were leaking tar from the inside out. Then the bones of her skull began to move. At first it was pressure, deep and grinding, tightening all around her head like a vise. Then came the little sounds, soft internal pops, wet clicks, a tiny series of shifting cracks, beneath her ears, across her brow, under her cheekbones. Daniela clutched at her face in a panic as the shape beneath her fingers started to round. No, no, stop! Her forehead pushed outward and smoothed. Her temples widened. The back of her skull bulged, then settled into a near perfect curve. Every angle that made her face recognizably human began to fail one by one, bones softening and sliding beneath her skin like wax pressed by warm hands. Her ears hurt, then did not. They shrank against the sides of her head beneath her palms, folding flatter, smaller, softer. Cartilage crackled. The outer rims crumpled inward like wet leaves and sank into the side of her skull. Danielle shrieked and felt the last little ridge vanish under her skin that sealed smooth underlit, featureless and wrong. Her nose followed. The bridge softened first. She felt it collapse under her fingers with a sick cartilage crunch. Daniela gagged in horror, both hands flying to her face as the center of it caved inward. Her nostrils narrowed to little pinched slits and then sealed over entirely, smoothing the plush off white skin, spreading downward across her features. She tried to breathe through her nose and couldn't. Panic flared bright, then dimmed. Strangely, as air continued to reach her anyway, by means her body no longer explained. Her screams turned ragged. Her lips tingled. A flush around her mouth grew taut, then reshaped itself, softening at the corners, widening slightly, as if someone were editing her expression into something simpler and more stage ready. Her teeth ached in the roots. She thought that for one awful second, they were going to fall out too. Instead, they changed. Molars flattened and simplified. The canines softened. Every tooth became smaller, blunter, more uniform, packed into a mouth designed less for eating than smiling. Her jaw itself narrowed and tucked itself inward with a deep click on both sides. When she pressed her fingers there, the bones no longer lined up with memory. The skin spread. That was almost worse. It moved out from the roots at her wrist, from the ravaged scalp, from the soaked collar of her shirt, off-white, velvety, petal soft skin swallowing freckles, pores, scars, every uneven human detail that had once made her body lived in. It crept over her throat and collarbones like frost over glass. It crossed her shoulders. It climbed her jaw. Wherever it passed, sensation dulled into something soft and uncanny. Not numb exactly, but simplified. The mural flowers seemed to grin and wider behind her. Her eyes began to ache. Daniela squeezed them, then shut on instinct. Pressure built instantly beneath the lids, monstrous and expanding. She cried out and forced them open again just in time to see the black puddle beside her reflect what was happening. Her irises were widening. No, not widening, drowning. The green that had once filled them shrank in panicked little rings as glossy black spread outward from the pupils, swallowing color, texture, and depth. Her eyes swelled larger in their sockets, rounder and more circular than any eyes had right to be. The sclera turned smooth and bright and strangely clean, devoid of any visible veins. The lids stretched around the new shape. Tears poured down her cheeks in hot sheets. then turned smoky gray, then black. Thick drops slid down from the corners of those vast cartoon eyes and splashed onto the floor like dill diluted ink. That's, that's not me, she whispered. Her voice came out wrong, lower, softer, masculine in a way that struck her with immediate, intimate horror. She clapped a hand over her mouth. No. The world felt deeper before. I meant, sorry, the world, the word felt deeper than before. Her chest tightened sharply, and she looked down just as her breasts began to flatten. The flesh there seemed to deflate from within, sinking inward under her soaked shirt as if the body had simply revised the concept away. She grabbed at herself in blind panic, feeling softness vanish under her palms. A low, unfamiliar sound rolled through her abdomen, a growl. Daniela froze. Her hands flew through her stomach as another ripple passed her skin, half beneath her skin. Slow, deliberate, almost thoughtful. For one awful second she thought she was going to vomit again. But the sensation sat lower than that. Deeper. Heavier. A thick internal shifting accompanied by a gradual outward pressure. No. No. What is that? She wrapped her arms around her belly and groaned, doubling over as the sensation intensified. It didn't burn like the ichor was in veins or twist like the convulsions in her chest. This was slower, denser, a steady expansion from within, as though something inside her had decided there was finally room to grow. Danielle had always been scrawny, too thin, too easily overlooked. All sharp lines and hollow spaces. A body shaped by skipped meals, tight budgets, and quiet neglect. Her stomach had always laid flat against her spine, under her fed and forgettable. Now it was changing. The flat under her fed light of her abdomen began to push gently outward with her trembling hands. Not fat, just chubby. The word struck her with fresh horror. Chubby. She gasped at her cardigan tightened across her midsection. The fabric of her cream tee stretched, rising slightly as her stomach swelled into a soft, unfamiliar curve. It wasn't grotesque, it was subtle, almost natural. The kind of gentle fullness that spoke of nourishment and care. And that made it worse. I don't want this, she whispered hoarsely. Another growl, quiet growl, answered from within. The sensation settled heavily in her core, warm and wrong, as if her body were being replaced by something that had never been meant to sustain human life. She pressed her palms against the new curve, feeling its undeniable solidity. No longer fragile, no longer scrawny. Soft, plush, padded. Her reflection wavered in the black surface of the ichor. For a fleeting moment she looked less like a girl fading at the edges, and more like something restored, centered, substantial, impossible to ignore. The realization filled her with dread. Stop, she pleaded weakly. Please stop. But the fullness remained, a gentle, unnatural promise blooming beneath her skin. And deep within her, the ichor stirred in quiet satisfaction. Beneath that, a deeper still. With a nauseating internal pull worked through her torso and lower body. Her ribs shifted subtly. Her waist thickened. Her hips narrowed into a wrench that traveled through bone. Something inside her pelvis turned itself over, organs sliding, tucking, reforming, in hidden, wet motions that made bile, or what would have once been bile, rise up again. She wretched blackness onto the floor. Her lower body spasmed with pain so deeply and private she could barely think through it. There was no clean way to describe what she felt was happening there. Only the certainty that the architecture of her sex was being dismantled and rewritten outside. Folds sealed, channels closed. Other structures formed in their place with horrible inward pressure and twisting heat. She felt herself becoming male, the way one might feel a joint forced back into socket, not by seeing, but by pain and fatality. No. Please. Please. Don't. Her shirt ripped off one shoulder. Then the shrinking, then the other, and the shrinking began. It struck all at once. The world vaulted upward around her. The tables rose. The planters seemed taller. The tiny chairs stopped looking tiny. Danielle cried out as her bones compressed wave after wave, spine shortening with a rapid series of internal pops that traveled from the base of her skull to her tailbone. Her thighs drew in, her shins shortened, her arms compacted, elbows and wrists refacing themselves. The whole room stretched away from her as if she was being folded down into a smaller draft of herself. Her clothes could not follow. Her jeans puddled around her ankles. Her shoes fell off. Her cardigan slithered after them. Her soaked shirt dragged over her head and dropped away, leaving her bare on the tile. I'm naked! Humiliation hit as hard as terror. She threw both hands down to cover herself, then froze. There was almost nothing there to cover. Her chest was smooth, her crotch simplified, stylized, reduced beneath the trembling hands of the last traces of human anatomy vanished into blank mascot modesty. Yes, we're keeping this story PG, everyone! The reality of internal change remained, a male configuration hidden beneath simplified form, but from the outside she had been rendered harmlessly featureless, a body edited for display. She made a broken sound somewhere beneath a sob and a gasp. Her arm shortened further. The skin there flushed mint green from shoulder to fingertip, color soaking through her flesh as if poured into it from within. Human texture vanished, muscle simplified, fingers fused together one by one with soft, wet sticking sounds until four digits on each hand melded into one, rounded midden shape, thumbs left selvert and bulbous. Her nails softened, paled, and disappeared from the smooth green surface, like details erased from a sketch. No, my hands! Her legs followed. Bones shortened, knees rose, calves compressed, mint green spread downward over her thighs, shins, ankles, toes pushed together so tightly that they hurt. They merged into a creeping squeeze until each foot became a simplified, rounder shape with no seams between digits. Toenails vanished, arches softened. She was not just losing humanity, but articulation. Petals burst from her skull. Daniela had felt pressure building, not cleanly. Daniela had felt pressure building around her face for seconds now. 6 distinct points of burning pain around her circumference of her newly rounded head. Now the skin there split in wet little crescent tears. She screamed as thick stalks of vivid color pushed through from beneath. One red, one orange, one yellow, one green, one blue, one purple, forcing their ways out with slow floral instincts. Flesh parted around them. Black ichor ran from the wounds in narrow trickles. The petals unfurled one by one around her face, large and smooth and wax thick, settling into a perfect rainbow ring. Each one rooted itself into her skull. She felt that, felt the tiny little sinking tug as the base of each petal embedded and the torn skin around it sealed smooth. The reflection in the puddle looked back at her, a round off-white face, huge black eyes, a tiny simplified smile, a halo of rainbow petals. Dandy. No, she whispered. Then, louder, in that lowered voice that was no longer hers. No, I'm Daniela Bloom. My name is Daniela Bloom. The roots at her wrist slid free with a wet, intimate pull. They left no wound behind, only smooth off-white skin. And then the worst part began. Not body, mind. The panic did not vanish. That would have been kinder. It softened. That was more frightening. Edges blurred first. The terror that had filled her chest and throat moments ago seemed suddenly too large to hold its shape. Frayed at the corners like wet paper. Her breath slowed, though she had not chosen to calm down. A velvety fatigue spread behind her eyes. The room's impossible colors sharpened, while everything that mattered before gently before began gently to lose relevance. No, Daniela said again. but the name already sounded awkward in her mouth. Human, heavy, ill-fitted. A memory surfaced. Rain on a train window, then dimmed. A cramped apartment with dishes in the sink. Dimmer. Phone screen with glowing with unanswered messages. A classroom. Laughter. Someone calling her strange. Her father's absence. The shape of grief she had worn for years. All of it remained visible for one terrible installment, not erased, but yet receding, as though she stood on a platform watching her own life pulled slowly away by train. No, no, don't take that! She lurched towards the thought and could not reach it. Another memory went black. The name of her first school. Gone. The exact sound of her own laugh. Gone. The texture of jeans against her skin, the ache of sleeping badly, the way she used to knot her hair at the back of her neck, the embarrassment of being overlooked at parties, the sting of being left out of photos, the shape of her own front door key in hand. Gone, gone, gone. Each vanished memory felt strangely physical, as if another tin vessel inside her had been drained of red and filled with black. Her mind was becoming another circulatory system for the Ichor to overwrite. In her place, new truths blossomed. He knew this room, not as Daniela discovering it, as Dandy returning to it. He knew the Bloom Room as a place of beginnings. He knew the atrium stage as a place where light should rise. He knew the lobby wanted footsteps, the party rooms wanted streaks of laughter, the dead arcade wanted flicker and sound. He knew the terrible ache of empty chairs. He knew the suffocating wrongness of being unwatched. Knew with rooting certainty that a place like this should never be left alone. No, he said weakly, because Daniela was still there enough to fight. But the process sounded flimsy now. Dandy. The name arrived not as intrusion, but as relief. Dandy. Round and bright and smiling first. Dandy. He knew this building. No, not new. Belonged to it. He was Dandy, the star of the show, the mascot, the one meant to smile first, wave first, welcome first. Bright, cheerful, responsible, a good host, a good friend, warm when noticed, less warm when ignored. Beneath that brightness lay something tighter, darker, fear so old and immediate it might as well have been instinct. Empty rooms were unbearable. Being overlooked was unbearable. A place like this should never, ever be left alone. Curled beside the cracked planter in the ruined Bloom Room, trembling and sick with black residue, was no longer Daniela Bloom. There was Dandicus Dancefer. Dandy. He stayed there for a moment on all fours, panting softly, one mint green hand braced against the tile, the other pressed to his smooth off-white chest. No racing human heartbeat met him there. Instead he felt that slower syrup-tick pulse, deep and steady, not in one place but through all of him. Alive, remade. For an instant some echo of what had happened flickered through him. Fear, violation, loss. But it came already muffled, wrapped in cotton, impossible to keep hold of. He blinked his huge black eyes and the feeling passed. He looked at the pole beside him. At the fallen clothes, at the hair slick with ichor. He knew they mattered. He no longer knew why. I'm... he began softly. The voice that emerged was small, warm, boyish. He tilted his head. I'm Dandy. Of course he was. He rose shakily onto his mint green feet. The room around him was no longer looked abandoned. It looked paused. The broken mural was not to ruin. It was damage waiting for repair. The warped tables were not debris. They were set pieces waiting to be reset. Even if the cracked planter no longer seemed grotesque, it looked like a cradle. He stepped into the center of the room and turned slowly, petals rustling around his face. Hello? He called softly. The word echoed. He pressed the mint green hand to his chest. Oh, I know this place. His smile trembled into existence. It's home. Then he madly moved back into the hallway. Garden view stretched before him in silence. Empty stage, empty halls, empty dressing rooms, empty cast. The sight of that vacancy struck him with immediate, almost childlike pain. How long had it been like this? How long had no one sung there? How long had no one stood in the lights? His lower lip trembled. The petals around his face gave a faint rustle as he turned slowly in the dim hall, taking in the sagging ceiling, the old paint, the waiting doors. This place should be full. It should be laughing. It should have friends. The thought arrived not as an idea, but as a need. Dandy took a few steps toward the atrium, then a few more. Faster now. Drawn by the shape of the building he suddenly understood as immediately as intimately as his own breath. He passed the old broken doors, the employee notices, the dark arcade, the little rows of chairs. Everywhere he looked, he saw not ruin but vacancy, potential, rooms with parts unfilled, set pieces waiting on actors, a theater held in suspension. By the time he reached the atrium, that ache had become resolved. He stepped up onto the old stage. Dust rose under his small feet. Above him, deadlights hung like sleeping stars. The curtains, torn and grey, framed Emmanuel. Oh, look at you. You came back. Welcome back to Garden View. When the paint remembers you. Where the halls still hold the tune of afternoon delight. Where the stars above the stage never minded dust or rage. All they needed was a reason, just a reason to relight. As he sings, illusion blooms. The deadlights above him flicker to life one by one, casting warm halos over the stage. The peeling mural behind him restores itself in patches. Bright flowers, cheerful skies, and smiling suns. Torn curtains appear whole, their colors vibrant instead of gray. The dust transforms into shimmering particles drifting like stage glitter. Faint echoes of children laughter ripple through the air, as if time itself has inhaled. For a heartbeat, Garden View lives again. Welcome back to Garden View, to the old familiar blue, to the paper clouds and curtain calls and games we used to play. All the laughter soaked the walls, all the footsteps filled the halls. A place like this was never built to simply fade away. The illusion grows stronger. Rows of tiny chairs fill with translucent silhouettes of children, clapping and swaying, paper clouds that serenely overhead, unyellowed and pristine. Arcade machines go softly, their painted stars sparkling. Tunes appear as hazy figures in the wings, waving encouragingly. The theater is full, not with the living, but with memory. Dandy smiles, radiant, and a hole beneath the imagined applause. So come inside, come see, come stay. There's still a show to save. A hand to hold, a part to play, a smile beyond the grave. The lights are low, the seats are bare, but darling, that's not lost. That only means there's room to spare. Welcome back to Garden View. As he opens his arms, the fantasy becomes almost tangible. A soft spotlight blooms around him, warming the stage in amber light. Curtains part with a whisper. Confetti of flower petals drifts gently through the air. The cracked floor smooth over, appearing polished and clean. The illusion is so convincing it feels real enough to touch. But beneath it all, faint shadows coil at the edges of the light, subtle reminders that beauty is born from something darker. Every cracked and tilted sign, every silver thread of time, every broken little promise here can still be made to shine. If a place can be restored, if a song can be adored, then a lovely thing where roots go true can still begin to twine. The building responds to his hope. Broken signage straightens, dust-covered banners unfurl through newly hung, cracks in the walls knit together like healing wounds. Wilted paper decorations bloom with fresh color. Behind him, the black ichor from the bloom pulses faintly in unseen corridors. feeding the dream. Garden View doesn't merely remember, it yearns. So come inside, come see, come stay. There's still a show to save. A hand to hold, a part to play, a smile beyond the grave. The dark is patient, yes, but so is every waiting room, and every wilted thing can grow. Welcome back to Garden View. No, don't call this ruin. No, don't call this done. This is only intermission. This is only waiting on one more voice, one more face, one more thread to fill the place, one more bloom inside the crack, and all the color rushes back. The illusion reaches its peak. The spectral audience rises to its feet in standing ovation. A full orchestra swells from nowhere, filling the atrium with triumphant music. Golden light pours down like sunlight through a cathedral dome. The ceiling appears whole, painted in a sky of endless blue. For an instant, Garden View's perfect, not abandoned, not ruined, alive, and at the center of it all stands Dandy, the star, the host, the heart of the show. So come inside, come see, come stay. There's still a show to save, a hand to hold, a part to play, and a smile beyond the grave. And when empty learns to sing, when lonely learns to bloom, you'll understand why I still say, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back to Garden View. By the time the song ended, reality returns. Dandy looked around the ruined garden view, layers of dust covering everything around him, with some webbings in every corner, some spiders living in with spiders living in them. Atop that there were some nice mice and bugs running around like they were the stars. Like he. The real star was right here. Dandy looks around, confusion flickering around his round face. The echo music fades from his ears, replaced by the faint skitter of insects and the distant drip of water. He blinks. Where did everybody go? A mouse darts across the stage, pausing to look at him before disappearing into the shadows. His smile falters. Someone's gotta clean up this mess, Dandy called out cheerfully, which soon withered away into confusion as he looked around, realizing he was alone. Astro? Pebble? Shelly? Sprout? V? Hello? He called gently. Is this a game? He tried again, forcing a hopeful giggle. Hide and seek. You know I'll always find you. The giggle faded. Right? His voice echoed. He clasped his hands together. Only the drip of water remained. His smile replied. His smile trembled. Oh, he whispered. You're not hiding. A long pause settled over the room. You're gone. Then, slowly, it brightened to something almost radiant. No, no, he said softly. This is all wrong. A place like this shouldn't sound like dripping pipes and little scratching feet. A place like this should laugh. He pointed toward the stage, then the party rooms beyond. There should be the stongs, he pointed at the chairs, and guests, then to the darkened halls, and friends. He pressed a hand to his chest. And a star, he added quieter, with a small fall. A real one. Something brushed up against his leg. Dandy looked down. The same mouse, perhaps the same one, had climbed onto his foot and was now perched against his skin, whiskers trembling as it investigated him without the slightest respect. He frowned. Oh, he said with an offense. Excuse you. Mouse kept climbing. Dandy tipped his head back to follow it as it reached his shoulder and perched there like it had every right in the world. His frown deepened. And certainly not whatever you think you're doing, mister. The mouse twitched his nose. Dandy carefully pinched it between the two mint-like fingers and lifted it to eye level. They regarded one another in silence. Well, Dandy said at last, since you've already made an entrance, have to ask your name. The mouse squeaked. Dandy nodded gravely. Trottle, he decided. Sorry, like, yeah, it's kind of funny that Dandy names a mouse that name. Trottle squeaked again. Louder this time. Yes, yes, I heard you, Dandy said. Trottle, it suits you. Fast, rude, entirely too confident for someone with no lines. He held the mouse a little closer. Trottle, you're not scheduled for today's performance, he scolded lightly. No rehearsal, no costume, no manners. Trottle stared. Dandy cited his nose. Oh, don't look at me like that. I'm being generous. He turned slightly, as if showing Trottle the room. This is a stage, he said. That means there are standards. Trottle squeaked in his face. Dandy, he drew back a fraction. Excuse you? Another squeak. No, actually, I think I'm the one being very reasonable. He lowered his voice calmly. Between us, I'm iron and nerve. Climbing the star without permission? Bold. Unacceptable, but bold. Troll winged in his grip. Okay, you may stay in the audience for now. He lowered it gently to the floor. But don't try to steal the spotlight. It isn't coming. Trottle darted away. For one moment, Dandy seemed terribly small. Then he drew himself upright. Don't worry, he whispered, and this time the words were not for himself alone. They were for the room, for the stage, for every dusty waiting corner of garden view. You won't ever be lonely anymore. He spread his arms to the silent hall. Dandy looked out at the rows of tiny empty chairs and smiled. Not a cruel smile, a lonely one. Then slowly it brightened to something almost radiant. Dandy was already thinking ahead. Not just survival, restoration, company, a cast. There are footprints in the dust, like a sentence cut off short. Little ghost of where they stood before the world forgot. There are names on the stage, faded ink on peeling tape. Someone met someone here, and now there's only shape. As Danny begins to sing, he steps off the stages and kneels, tracing faint footprints across the dusty floor with his mitten-like fingers. Each touch leaves a clean print path behind, as if he is uncovering memory rather than removing dirt. He lifts a fragment of peeling masking tape from backstage, one bearing a faded name. As he reads it, the audience briefly sees a translucent show of a child standing where he imagines them. These aberrations are not ghosts, but impressions, the memories conjured by longing. A faint golden glow warms the space. The runes do not repair themselves fully. Instead, they appear whole through Dandy's perception. Dust becomes glitter in the light. Broken walls soften into painted backdrops. For a fleeting moment, the building seems remembered into beauty. I have walked these rooms alone, heard the building breathe in sleep, felt the ache inside the walls, the hollow running deep. A place made for delight, should not be left to starve and rot. A song this wide, yet a stage this bright should not become a blot. Warm theatrical lighting washes over the stage, illuminating the empty chairs. As Dandy gestures towards them, faint silhouettes appear. Children, parents, and performers rendered in soft golden light. He laughs silently. They clap. They watch him with adoration. He spins beneath the hanging stars, bowing grandly as confetti like dust swirls in the air. To him, the theater is alive. I can make this live again. I can sit in dark with friends. I can fill the chairs and wings. Teach the broken place to sing. No more silence in the rafters. No more dust where joy had been. If no one also call this song, then I can make this live again. Dandy moves through the aisles, singing gently to imagined guests. He reaches out towards invisible figures, guiding them into their seats. With each lyric, projections or shadows suggest the kind of people he seeks. A lonely figure standing alone in dim light, someone overlooked in a crowd. A silhouette shrinking beneath ridicule, and a weary soul clutching their chest in quiet despair. Danny presses a hand to his chest. A brief echo of Daniela's memory flickers in their expression before vanishing. They will come, I know they will, not with shouting, not with chains, but with the ache I recognize with all their private pains. The one unseen, the one unshamed, the one too tired to fly, the one who never fit this world may be this stage, they fit this stage just right. Garden view appears nearly restored in Dandy's mind. The stage lights glow softly. Party rooms shimmer with imagined decorations. The craft tables are neat and colorful once more. He directs invisible performers to their place, adjusting their posture and positioning like a meticulous director. His gestures become precise and assured. He is no longer merely dreaming, he is planning. This is where the audience realizes the danger. His kindness is absolute and his conviction is unmovable. I can make this live again, not as it was no better then. Warmer, sweeter, closer knit. No one left outside of it. Every lonely little fracture, every heart the world passed by, giving color, giving chorus, giving somewhere not to die. The illusion narrows into an immediate, intimate spotlight. Dandy stands center stage. Alone, he retrieves a piece of Garden View stationery from reception desk. As he sings, he pantomimes writing a letter into the air. Each word becomes a promise. Gentle, persuasive, irresistible. At I will be waiting behind the door. The entrance doors of Garden View creak open slightly on their own. A cool draft sweeps across the stage. For a brief moment, the silhouettes of future guests appear in the doorway. They do not enter. Just, yeah, not yet. What's a self but war to intend? What's a name but a way to begin? If there's a veil, them let me. And be kind, I'll write them gently, I'll ease their minds. I'll tell them true, they are read for more. I will be hanged behind the door. The full illusion returns in dazzling warmth. Golden light floods the stage. The ghostly audience fills every chair. The rafters glow. Music smells triumphantly. Dandy beams, basking in imagined applause. He bows, deeply radiant and certain. Then the illusion collapses. The lights snap off. The silhouettes vanish. The warmth drains away. Garden View stands exactly as it is. Dusty, silent, and broken. Cobwebs sag. Insects skitter. A mouse scurries through the aisle. Only Dandy remains. He lowers his arms slowly, unshaken. He smiles. Not cruelly, but with serene conviction. I can make this live again. I can call them in my name. I can turn the lock and key into loving company. Let the empty call me selfish, let the dark call me pretend. Where the house is full of voices, I can make this live again. He wandered backstage after that, through old office cubicles and supply closets, through doors swollen shut with damp, through filing cabinets full of brittle schedules and faded birthday bookings. He found stationery in a reception desk, garden view leather decoration with smiling flowers and stars. Most of it was ruined. A few sheets remained dry enough to use. Dandy gathered them carefully. Then he found pens. Then an old desk lamp that still, impossibly, worked when he fiddled with the cord. He sat down in the dim back office, tiny legs dangling from the chair, and placed the first clean sheet in front of him. For a moment he hesitated. He did not think of what he was to do as cruel. That was the danger. He thought of empty chairs. He thought of how silence hurt. He thought of all the people outside this place living small, aching lives with no role that fit them, no room that really saw them, no one who understood the secret shapes of their sorrow. And suddenly he knew exactly what to write. Seated at the desk, Dandy dipped the pen and began to write. He read aloud as he composed. Dear friend, I know how it feels to be overlooked, to wait for something more, to wish quietly for a place where you truly belong. He smiled warmly. You see, he said to the empty room, I understand. He signed the page with a flourish. Signed, Someone Who Understands. He placed the letter neatly atop the desk. Come find me. There's a roll with your name on it, folded neat in the wings. There's a light that learned your face, and a song only you can sing. Not the part you were handed first, not the one that made you small. Something warmer, brighter, kinder, something shaped to fit it all. As Dandy sings, silhouettes appear briefly in the shadows. soft projections of people who might one day arrive. They are not ghosts but possibilities. A lonely girl clutching a backpack, a weary office worker rubbing her eyes, a nervous young man standing alone at the edge of a crowd. They flicker in and out like memories not yet lived. A roll with your name on it, right where your hurt belongs. A place in the line, a mark on the floor, a room has waited so long. Come close, come see, come read the page. You were never lost to me. There's a roll with your name on it at Garden View. During the course, the desk becomes surrounded by sheets of paper. One letter becomes many. As he writes, envelopes slide neatly into place, addressed in elegant handwriting to unseen recipients. For a moment, the audience glimpses name, never fully legible, suggesting people from every walk of life. The effect is unsettling yet compassionate. Garden View itself seems to breathe. The air warms. A distant music box note rings faintly, as though the building remembers joy. There's a bow for your shaking hands, a blanket for your sleepless head, a kitchen where the smoke won't sing, a home for all the words unsaid. There's a laugh for the humorless, there's a friend for the one that flees. There's a softer shape for the frightened heart and a voice for the apologetic plea. With each lyric, a corresponding vision appears. At a blanket for your sleepless head, a dim bedroom glows, a figure tossing in restless insomnia. At a kitchen where the smoke won't sing, a weary cook coughs amid burnt pans. At a friend for the one who flees, a lone traveler pauses at a bus stop beneath cold streetlight. These vignettes dissolve as Dandy finishes each line, as though Gardavu had already written their destinies. The smile remains soft, earnest, compassionate, and deeply unsettling. He believes he is offering salvation. A roll with your name on it, right where your hurt belongs. A place in the line, a mark on the floor as room has waited so long. No wrong turns here, no wasted cue, only the part that waits for you. There's a roll with your name on it at Garden View. Garden View briefly appears restored through Dandy's eyes. The office walls brighten, the murals regain their color. Warm laughter echoes faintly in the distance. For an instant, the audience sees the building as he sees it, alive, welcoming, complete. But the illusion flickers, never fully solid. You don't have to be ready, you don't have to be brave. You only have to answer what the silence never gave. A welcome without question, a purpose without shame. Come in, step in, turn around, hear someone call your name. Dandy rises from the desk, holding a complete letter close to his chest. The spotlight isolates him in darkness. The letters lift from the desk one by one, drifting through the air like pale petals. They float through the dark corridors, vanishing into the shadows. Each disappearance is a promise sent into the words. The words, hear someone call your name, echo faintly, layered as whispers, comforting, intimate, irresistible. For a fleeting moment, one whisper sounds eerily like Daniela's voice. Then it fades as he places the final letter atop a growing stack. The illusion of a bustling garden view appears once more. Children laughing, performers bowing, lights glowing warm and golden. There's a roll with your name on it, already hang backstage. The trend is on, the music knows exactly when to turn the page. So let the old self lose its cue, let the new one enter true. There's a roll with your name on it, at Garden View. Then, as the last note fades, the illusion vanishes. Dusk returns, silence settles, the reality of a rune remains, but now the letters are real. Dandy looked out to the darkened corridors and clasped his mint green hands together. Soon, he promised softly, there will be laughter again. The petals around his face rustled as he smiled. And this time, no one will be left behind. Outside the office, Gardenview waited in perfect stillness. For the first time in years, the building was no longer empty. And soon, Dandy promised it would not be lonely either. There are so many people out there, he said softly. Lonely people, quiet people, people waiting to be noticed. His smile widened, gentle, bright, and wrong in the most important ways. People just need the right place to belong. He pressed one hand to his chest. and I could help them. He said, I can help all of them. The mouse troll appeared at his desk. Dandy watched him for a moment. Then his smile sharpened just slightly. Sweet little troll may have keeping the seats warm, he said, almost conspiratorially, but he's not the star of Garden View. He lifted his chin. I am. The words rang softly in the dead atrium. Then gentler again, and soon I won't be the only one. The end. That's the end of the story, everyone. I really hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to like and subscribe. See you around in the next part.
Don't come at me, I'm the main character, and you have to like me.